morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, October 15th. It's episode 14 of LivLive. Really excited to have Greg Woleck here. He is a builder, carpenter, consultant, facilitator, man of the world, knowledge center, and working with Remodelers Advantage with design teams and production teams. So really excited to have you here, Greg, and kind of pick your brain a little bit.
I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
I think you've actually watched the show before, which this is really exciting for me because people are like, what is this?
I have an alert on my phone. It comes up when LivLive is there. And it just so happened I was with your design manager last week and it came up right at a break. So it was very, very timely.
Did you guys watch it at the roundtable meeting?
It was coffee time. Apologize. Everyone wanted to get their coffee and donut at that point. So.
Well, that one last week's was really. Did you have a chance to watch it? Not to put you on the hot seat here. So, are you familiar with Yestermorrow and Brickley Mountain?
I am very familiar with Yestermorrow. I have some good connections that either work there or have worked there in the past.
Cool, because that's kind of Allie grew up in that, and so you're in Connecticut, so kind of the Northeast knows that area of Vermont, that Mad River Valley. So yeah. Allie grew up in that area. Her dad taught at Yestermorrow, and I believe she went to Yestermorrow, and then she has this feature film, I think, premiering this week, which is the culmination of 8+ years of really putting together a documentary on growing up in that world and the community behind it. So pretty cool, and it's fun. And I was actually talking to Paul McManus yesterday, just on kind of a random call, and he's like, "Yeah, I love Yestermorrow. I actually took some classes there." So there's actually it seems kind of fringe, but it's also somewhat, mainstream, I think, in the Northeast, or at least in the world of design build, I think, right?
Definitely in the natural building realm. New Frameworks is up in Burlington, Vermont. Ace and Jacob, I believe, both do instruction at Yestermorrow. A lot of straw bale, a lot of clay plaster, really, really interesting stuff going on there.
And so in your history or your life, so you were a carpenter, right?
I started bags on carpenter, 25 years ago. Actually, prior to that, I worked for my grandfather. He and my dad had a boat shop in Florida. So we did a lot of, it was fiberglass boat building there. And then once I moved back to New England from Florida, I decided that I wanted to get back. I wanted to be a carpenter. Other than the job I have now, probably the most satisfying job I've ever had in my life. Just love it.
How are you? Are you good at cutting rafters?
I've had this conversation a couple weeks ago with a friend of mine. I used to be able to do it with a framing square. I'm not sure I could do it now. I would probably need to brush up a little bit, but I could do that. I love cutting stairs. I love hanging doors. Sarah will tell you that. I love to hang doors. That is one of my favorite things to do. I don't know why, but it's just very satisfying to be able to get a door closed and, not opening on its own.
So you did rough framing and trim carpentry.
Yeah. So when I started, 100 years ago, we did everything. I mean, we formed our own footings. We put up our own foundations. We framed and we trimmed. Other than mechanicals, insulation. I mean, of course, we've all done our fair share of insulation, but that would be a trade we'd bring in. Electrical, I never did any of that stuff, but my started literally in the footing and all the way up. So it was a really great experience. And on the framing side of things or on the trim side of things, you learned what to do as a framer to help the trim guy. I one space I was working in, we did sub out the framing, or someone else did the framing. There was a closet door and a powder room door right next to each other, and they didn't nail the plate off in between the two once they cut the plates away. So I'm trimming one door, I get it perfect. I go over to do the other door, and now the other door is messed up because the plate was moving. But to be able to handle it all myself, I thought was a really great way to learn and think about the people that were coming after you as well.
Yeah, I think it's something that we see kind of across the trades, right? So like your painter tells you how good your drywaller is.
Yes.
And also how good your trim carpenter is. You know how big those nails are that they put in there and how big the gaps are. And then your drywaller tells you how good your framer is.
Yeah.
But you know, if you're doing so much of the kind of vertically integrated trades or kind of controlling that, it's kind of the essence of design build in a lot of ways. It's just this overall control of everything, which is hard to scale, right?
Yes. Yes, it is. Now I had, I don't have a huge ego, but painters did like to work after me because nails were filled. There was no gaps in miter, like everything. Again, I don't have a whole lot to go on in my life, but man, I was a good carpenter.
Yeah, and I think in so much of it in the design build business world, where we're trying to grow our companies, bring on more people, and you're in a subcontractor model, so much of what our project manager job is to make sure that all those guys are looking out for the people in front of them. And the other thing that we see too is our subs are growing their companies. There's a labor shortage. Clearly, they don't want to hang drywall for the rest of their lives. So we might talk to the boss man, but you have no idea who's actually doing the work. So you end up with all these crazy layers of oversight and management, just trying to achieve minimal number of screw pops in a sheet of drywall, right?
Right, exactly.
And I want to hear from you a little bit more, but just a little bit more on the carpenter, because I love that. I did some carpentry in the summers in high school and in college, and I was enamored by it. And I have the utmost respect. I have respect for all the trades, but carpenters are just these magicians that are just able to figure stuff out like nothing I've ever seen. I know they work all day and then go to sleep at night, and their brain is processing exactly what they're going to do the next day.
That's exactly how I worked. I always liked to know what was going on the next day. If I wasn't the lead or I wasn't the site supervisor, I'd like someone to feed me that information, because I would I would lay in bed at night and think about, you know, the material I needed, the tools I needed, the setup I wanted for that day. I really and I would feel way out of sorts if I just got thrown onto a job to do something. I mean, I'd figure it out eventually, but I really did like thinking about things ahead of time. You're very right there.
It's kind of like the mise en place of a chef, right? You have to have the materials there. You have to have the nails there. There's things that are going to have to be solved that won't be solved immediately. They'll be solved the next day, because it's like a 24-hour rule.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So
I never
then
thought of that for carpentry, but that definitely fits.
I think so. That's how I see it. Maybe I'm making it a little more glamorous than it is, but I don't know. It's just so hard. And as an architect on the design side of things, the hardest part about building to me is just figuring out how to make those designs actually come to fruition, because there's just a crazy amount of variables, just unbelievable. And nothing's square in the real world, right? Nothing's plumb in an addition. You're going to add on to something that's going to be off. You have to have tolerances built in. We don't really draw framing details. I mean, we do when we need to, right? For like a structural connection. But for the most part, we're showing a design intent, and the carpenters are somehow able to not just shape that, but also, construct it properly, within code compliance and within structural integrity, which is just mind blowing to me.
I worked it was a design build firm in Wilton, Connecticut, and a great designer. I love working with this guy, and we kind of got to the point where if he could draw it, I'll figure out a way to build it. It's whether it was the connections or the cuts, that sort of thing. And really, and I love that about that job, that it wasn't so confined. I mean, we had rules, right? There were certain things you had to do, whether it was jack studs for an opening or whatever it was. You had certain things you had to deal with, but for the most part, Those things weren't laid out for us. We had to either know it or figure it out as we were doing it.
And it's not always ground up. And by
Right.
that I mean we have a project that we just started, and that's why I was coming in hot to this call or to this show, because I was on the job site, and we're building an addition underneath an existing roof. So the building of said addition from the ground up and gravity is one thing, but the carpenters also come in and have to understand how to structurally shore that up so that we can build a foundation underneath of it, right? There's a lot of false work, I think would be the, form work, false work, bracing, all that other stuff that goes into it.
Absolutely. And honestly, doing takeoffs, I usually forget that lumber, right? That's the stuff that's not, sticks and bricks, you're counting what's on your documents. And it took me a couple of, errors, a couple of mistakes to realize that, I needed a bundle of 16-foot 2x4s so I could shore stuff up and brace stuff up and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's the unwritten rules of baseball in construction, if you will.
Yes, exactly. And then we take those pieces to the next job, hopefully, and not just throw them in a dumpster, but
right.
We'll use them for something. Yeah. So when it comes to trim carpentry, and I want to move on past your carpentry history too, but I just love this stuff. How much larger would you frame a rough opening for a door size?
Probably 1.5 inches,
Okay.
left to right, and then sometimes a little higher. I like to cheat the headers up in case I had a floor out of level or something. That's the tolerances you're saying that aren't always built in, but also have to be aware of the window heights. I loved it when everything could line up. And that was
Yeah,
that was good stuff.
Yeah, that's always a hard one, especially when you have an exterior door.
Yep.
We have a couple details that we can do to make the trim all work. There's secrets, but yeah, we love alignments too. So on that note, we're kind of getting into the design side of stuff. So you work for Remodelers Advantage doing a number of things, right? So you run the Why We Build podcast, which is awesome.
Thank you.
And then you're also doing consulting, and then you're facilitating both production manager roundtables, which would be project managers and production managers, kind of the construction side of things, and then also the design manager roundtable.
Yeah. So my primary role at Remodelers Advantage is managing what we call the tactical groups. So that is the production managers, the design managers, the CFO group. We're working on an office manager thing. We've got a bunch of stuff in the works. So that's essentially, I'm managing that. At the same time, I am doing facilitating for those groups as well, which is probably my favorite thing I do here is the facilitation. And then in terms of consulting, I actually oversee the consulting department and then do my own consulting as a part of that. So I'm busy here. I love it. I wouldn't want to do anything else. It is a blast.
Well, in doing both construction and design, that has to be interesting.
Right? Very much so. And, a little bit like a therapist, because I'll hear things from, maybe two people from the same company, and I try and keep that inside. I don't ever let on that I know something, that, that sort of thing.
Not from LivCo, right?
Definitely not from LivCo. You guys are totally put together. And actually, the truth is, Scott and Sarah do have a good relationship. So that's a really, awesome thing for you guys going on. What I did learn is that the issues aren't all that different between design and production. And as much as we make them two departments, I think there's an argument that it's kind of one department. People have their specialties, but without production, designs don't get built, and without design, production would be handcuffed. And again, that a lot of the issues that both groups have are the same. It's the same issue. It's the drawing standard. It's the what's the rough opening. It's a lot of that stuff is the same between the two groups. So trying to really work on a collaborative approach. And from roundtables, we don't bash owners, we don't bash estimators, we don't bash design managers, We don't bash production managers. We try and look at a solution from what we have independent control over. Because if we're just the victim, we're always looking
Right.
for someone else to do something for us. We really need to just focus on what we have control over.
Yeah, I would say, and somewhat parallel to what you were saying in terms of drawing standards, something that we haven't really defined, but it's kind of this gray, just secret area, and we call it LOD, which is level of detail.
Mm-hmm.
Like how much detail does production need? They usually want more detail, right? And then we're also telling design, like, guys, you don't just need to go down this rabbit hole detailing how this piece of millwork is going to go together, because at the end of the day, it's probably going to get built a different way either. Do you hear a fair amount of uh, heads colliding on what the proper level of detail is?
And I don't have the answer for that either. Like,
Yeah,
because want and need are two different things. Does they would really need that level of detail? And maybe it's because I have experience. Like, I work with estimators sometimes, and they're looking for all this stuff, and I feel like you don't need it. I mean, answers are certainly helpful. Selections, I love to have 100% of selections down. But I was traveling. This is when Tim Fowler was still a part of the company, and he and I were traveling together. And a design manager asked me to look at these drawings and what could make them better. And I was like, redaction, less stuff. Like, there was so much stuff on these drawings. I don't think I would have had a breakdown trying to lay out the framing or the windows with the amount of information that was on these drawings. And probably not a popular opinion amongst my production people, but I think less is more sometimes. I really do.
yeah. I think there's especially in the world of architecture, where computer aided design and building information modeling makes it really easy to do more maybe for less. It ends up being a lower standard of work with more stuff in it, more lines, right?
Mhm.
Like back in the day when you draw by hand, every line that you drew took time. And so you wanted to be scarce in the number of lines that you drew. You want to be very specific about the story that you were telling and the layering of it. Building information modeling and all of its incredible strengths, you model something and then you just take a bunch of cuts of it and then you hand it out. But those cuts really may not tell the story. So when it comes to dimensioning, I'm a very minimal dimensioner, because I really want to show critical dimensions of what's necessary. Um, I don't like, obviously, I don't want people scaling the drawings, but of course they scale the drawings. But the idea is we do them at 3/16 inch scale, which production loves that, right?
Mm.
Because it's really hard to scale the drawings. And a minimum number of dimensions. And if our team needs a specific dimension because we missed something, I want them to reach out to us. Because you can literally hit a button in Revit that will just dimension everything.
Right.
But that might tell you the wrong layout point. Because in addition to remodeling, there's too many existing conditions. There's too many critical pieces that are where you're going to start to lay that out. And as a carpenter, you understand, where do you start your layout?
I'm looking for center lines. I'm looking for, certain benchmarks, because the accuracy on these BIM models is absolutely phenomenal. How down to the 32nd some of these drawings are, but the house isn't. Whether
Right.
it's an extra an extra layer of mud on the corner or something, it's going to throw all that stuff off. So I like things like above finished floor, center lines, or even just tell me to match a height, and that's what I'll work from, because chances are the floor's not level, the ceiling's not level, especially in remodeling we're talking about here. Um,
Right.
and as much as plumb level square is what we're all striving for, parallel in a lot of situations is better, especially in remodeling an older home or something historic. uh, plumb and level is going to mess everything up. You need to be parallel, and that's again that comes from experience. That comes from standing back and looking at the finished product and what people are going to see and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's about those relationships of what exists and what is going to be new, and so that takes brain power. I mean, it literally takes same thing when you're talking about estimating too and the level of information. Same thing. It's just some point. It takes brain power to solve these things, right? It's not just an equation because it is so unique in every project.
Yeah. And I will say that, coming up in the trades, I was very fortunate. For some reason, people took me under their wing. They cared about what I learned. They were very deliberate in helping me, and I was allowed to make mistakes. Not everything had to be perfect. I worked with one guy in Massachusetts. He was perfect. I mean, he's probably the best carpenter I ever worked with. He was cutting rafters like it was trim. I mean, and we go look at something 5 years later, and there would be no spaces, no curling, no nothing. I mean, it looked beautiful. Then I came to Connecticut, and I worked with this guy who taught me how to fix stuff, and that was a really good remodeling experience because it was really, again, more about parallel or in line with than perfect cuts and that sort of thing. But again, very lucky, had good people teaching me these things along the way, and very grateful for that.
So you're facilitating design and then production, obviously separate meetings, right? So just for our listeners who aren't familiar, so it's a roundtable group. So you have probably 10 companies.
Yeah, right around there,
like
9
that.
or 10 usually in a group, non-compete, and unless Livco is going to add another location, that makes it more difficult for me. But what are you
Who
going to do?
knows?
So yeah, and it's the idea is it's a peer group, right? We're not, as a company, we're not providing a curriculum necessarily. We're providing a framework. The best information comes from your peers. As a facilitator, I will likely get the last word, where I'll either tie it in a bow or cap something off or add something from my experience that might be helpful to a group. But basically, everyone comes to the meeting with a bunch of burning issues, and we do our best to dig into all of those. Some are going to be similar to other people. Some are going to be very unique to the company you're working with. But hopefully, there's enough diversity in your group amongst size of company, the department shape, way things looking. Some companies are trade partner heavy. Some companies are internal heavy. We have some companies in the design department where they sub out a lot of their work. We also have companies that have a lot of in-house design as well. So a lot of stuff that we're trying to bring together and hopefully, draw the best out of all the members there in order to get, feedback and input on what your burning issue is.
And so you're doing the design one and then the production one at different times.
Mhm.
What are there big differences between those two groups of companies or people between production and design? Because you're able to see it yourself, right?
Yeah.
Design always thinks production's different. Production always thinks design is different. We're able to see both of them. And I know there's some similarities, but what are kind of the big contrasts?
I think one of the contrasts is the idea of creativity, and that's definitely the bias there is in design. Now, most of the idea of the group is about management. We don't really talk much about design itself, but I would say half of our people are designing and managing their group, if not more, actually, probably a little higher in the design manager groups. But we're always trying to put, excuse me, I'm fighting through this cold here. We're
Right.
always trying to put like a number or a metric on creativity, and we've had 3 in-person meetings so far with the design managers, and it's something we're still talking about. It's so hard to put a metric or a value on being creative, and I think that becomes the hardest part when and probably your view in ownership, even though you do have that creativity in you, is we got to get jobs designed and into production in order to make our businesses flourish. But I think that's the biggest hurdle is just that that idea of creativity versus when a production guy just wants to get it done.
Is it a pretty common value amongst the, at least the companies that you have and in your design managers roundtable, that creativity is a really important value of the company?
I mean, it's 50-50. Some of the people there really understand their role as a manager, right? And they are
Mhm.
just like an owner or a production manager trying to get things out the door. So they're putting a lot of focus on that as well. But at the same time, most of these people are coming with a strong design background, and they want to see it, you know, look really good. We're not rushing things. And my own background, I work for design build companies, but New Canaan, Connecticut, home of the Harvard Five. These are some of the greatest mid-century modern architects in the world. I worked at Philip Johnson's museum. I worked at Landis Gorris's personal house. I worked at Elliot Noy's house. Like, I know what good design looks like, and I don't ever want to put a cap or a governor on that. I don't, so that's honestly, it's a struggle for me a little bit, is that balance between the business part of things and the full creativity part of things.
Yeah, I think it's a challenge for all, high level design build companies who are really trying. I mean, that's part of our value add, right?
Yep.
Like, people are like, what makes you different than XYZ? There's a bunch of big companies in Chicago that, do really great design build services. And I'm like, we're the best design company in Chicago. Like, we will be as good as any high level architect in Chicago. I promise you. Like, that is a big differentiator for us. Now, not everybody necessarily needs that, right? So I think we try and bring in a level of like pragmatic, which is in some way, you mentioned mid-century design. So much of that is extremely pragmatic. It's very thoughtful. There's pragmatism based in it. There's craft, right? There's certain areas where you can't bring the craft into everything, right? Because of budget. But there's areas where you want to accentuate that or really make that a focal point. I think is where we try and find ourselves. Because it's really hard. People don't have unlimited budgets, and this stuff is crazy expensive,
Yes.
And so we don't have a whole lot of, Italian plaster types of things. If somebody wanted that, surely we could do it. But, we're trying to achieve a thoughtful, really well-designed, inspiring, functional space, I think. So I think in terms of a KPI for that, I mean, I don't know. What are the design KPIs that you see coming out?
Right now, we're looking a lot at billable versus non-billable. Capacity is a big one.
Yeah.
What are people's capacities? That's another one that's really sort of hard to measure. There's point systems out there. There's different ways to kind of look at it, but every designer is a little different. Every designer has their strengths and weaknesses, just like every production person has their strengths and weaknesses. But overall, we're looking at companies and their percentage of billable to the overall revenue. What's their design backlog look like for production in terms of production dollars? But capacity is probably the biggest one that we're looking at now.
Yeah, I would see, and capacity also relates to cycle time, right? Like, how long do these things sit in design?
Right.
It's always a
Yeah, we do
challenge.
ask that too, but the tough part is a kitchen is different than a bath, is different than
Yeah.
3 baths, is different than a whole house. So we're trying to really refine that metric as well for the teams or for the groups, so they have a little better sense of what's going on in their own company, but how they compare to other companies. I think that's an important look too. Now we have some companies that are quite large in terms of their design teams. We have other companies that are a design department of one. They're getting ready to
Right.
grow. They're getting them. So um, it's really been hard finding that metric that's sort of universal, for everybody.
Yeah, I don't. We to your point. I mean, every project is different. We, as much as we try and pull data and find correlations, and maybe we can do a little bit more of that. It is every client, every project's a little bit different. Now we don't bill hourly or a retainer basis. We're a little bit, or I don't know. Are we unique? We just do a percentage.
I think a lot of folks do a percentage. I think you guys do a really good job at that upfront kind of go no go price. I think you have a pretty good process in place for that. Um,
Yeah,
I don't. I think that's rarer than percentage based.
yeah, and I think with design fees, it's always a little bit of a head trash struggle, right? Especially if you're coming from the construction side, because it's really easy to just say, let's just give away design for free so we can build it. But we learned at some point, in order to grow and hire more good designers, we need to be able to pay them.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I think it does. It puts a value on the design, the design process, and the design deliverables, and the creativity has a dollar amount on it. And ours is percentage based, and it should shake out. I always tell clients or prospects that it's comparable to, it's basically 10 to 13% of the construction budget, which is comparable to a high level architect. But we're also doing interior design. We're also doing pre-construction services. You're actually getting more out of that. So I think the value is there, and I think people understand that in order to get something good and high quality and enjoy the process along the way, it's going to take some money, right?
Yeah.
I think.
Uh, what bothers me is some companies that aren't willing to charge for the design build part of things, and I think um, you're doing yourself a disservice when you do that. Just because other companies in your area don't do that. There's the skin in the game, for the homeowner, that sort of thing. But
Mhm.
good design has good value. I mean, it is a valuable commodity that companies should be getting paid for. Should be making money on it, not just breaking even. That's another one that bugs me. Oh, we're just a lost leader. And I disagree. I spent a lot of time working with architects, and they didn't discount anything. They charged a premium for that service, and our folks are just as good, if not better. I encourage our design teams or design build companies to make sure they're making money on this, because it is the right thing to do for sure.
Yeah, I obviously wholeheartedly agree. Um, so and I wasn't able to make it this year. So in Denver, I guess it was last month, right? So you guys had the Remodelers Advantage, had the Remodeler Summit.
We
I
did.
heard it was I heard it was outstanding.
It was so fun. It was so fun. It was my third one. Chicago was the first one, San Diego last year, and then this year was Denver, and it was a blast. And for me, it was like it's like the Super Bowl for me, because I've got my design manager. I mean, sorry, the production managers are there before the event, so we're doing their roundtable meetings, and then we go right into community day, which is for our members. This year we did an employee version of community day as well, so I played a part in that. um, we did a panel for production managers, and then we recorded a podcast. So it was a heavy, lots to do, but man, it was a lot of fun, a lot of good people there, and we missed
So
you.
I know, I'm sorry. It's been a fall. But yeah, I heard such great stuff about it. So you did the Why We Build podcast live from that, right?
We did. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had Gates Bryan from Black Dog Builders in New Hampshire. One thing that's really, it's becoming apparent in our industry is it's second gen, third gen are starting to take over. Like, it's becoming of age, right? All of our, you know, the pioneers in the industry are now turning the roles over to their people. So Gates is Dave Bryan's daughter. She's going to be a rock star. That company's going to do great. So we talked a lot about the whole second generation coming in and maybe taking over for moms and dads and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I guess my 8-year-old daughter, let's see, she says that she wants to be an architect, but she doesn't want to have to do all the school for it.
Okay.
So we can arrange that.
Assessment.
I don't
See,
know
I
about
wanted
my
to be an
third.
architect, and I didn't know they were going to teach me how to build a house. So I like, let me be a carpenter first, so I can learn, and then I'll go be an architect. And then I just loved building, and then I'm with her. I didn't want to go back to school.
Yeah. No, it's true. I don't know who told you if you become an if you go to school for architecture, they'll never teach you how to build a house, but it's 100% true.
Yeah.
I worked for Habitat for Humanity is how I kind of got to, and I did carpentry in high school, but that's how, and I would bring a bunch of people from architecture studio and we would kind of figure out how to build these houses. It's a whole nother episode of how we ended up working for Habitat for Humanity. It may have started with some community service requirements.
Okay.
That's for another show. So did you speak at Summit as well?
So I hosted a panel with production managers. So I was up
Cool.
on, we had 3 very strong production managers, and we just kind of, our angle was like what business owners should know about having that role in their company. And fortunately we had folks there that had, the full support of their owners, so they were able to really share, things that made them successful.
Cool. And then any other kind of big takeaways or speakers that you'll never forget?
Steve McClatchy was our keynote. Usually that keynote gets you fired up and pumped up, and I think he was probably one of the best that we've had in years. Really, really good leadership kind of stuff. We had a great discussion on AI. We know that is a big part of our industry right now. We had a member, we had Jeff Borovitz, and we had Michael Anschel came and spoke about AI in their companies and things like that. I think it was Devin Vout was our member that was there. But yeah, good stuff. A lot of AI. Even the sponsors, a lot of the lunch and learns were around AI and technology, that sort of thing.
Cool.
Yeah.
So Anshel talked about AI.
He did. He did.
Right,
He's
I'm
great.
to have him on the show. I love that Dave. Love that guy.
I like him a lot.
Cool. Yeah, I was trying to mentally think back at some former Summit experiences. I remember they had I kind of always appreciated the fighter pilots.
Yeah.
Came out. I like that one. Had the guy from Invincible, right? Was it Invincible from the Eagles?
That might have been before I was there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they always put together some good stuff. And then did Mark Harari, did he do his Blue Tape website?
He did. He did not do Blue Tape website, but he did the Not So Late show with Mark Harari. He did that again, which is a blast. He's playing the role of Johnny Carson, and we 3 guests on that. So that was a pretty fun event.
Awesome. Well, we're kind of at time here, so I'll let you go in just a minute. I'm just on the theme of design managers and production manager roundtables. So which dinners are more fun with which group?
They're all fun. They are really all fun. There's a higher risk of not showing up the next morning, I think, with the production managers. Not that that's happened. Some of them they'll pregame and postgame. I just go for the food, and
those guys know how to party.
And then yeah. Once I hit 50, it was like 9 o'clock is bedtime.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you need to be up late partying at those things, but I have had some of my best, most fruitful conversations both at Summit and at roundtables late at night. Just talking to people, right? It's kind of those off the record conversations where I think Scott and I actually had a Michael Hodgins conversation. I think that was in DC at the fire pit, and he's playing guitar and just gave us all these incredible ideas for doing budget updates. Like all the issues that we had were literally solved by this solution. It was like a silver bullet. But to get to that point, what the problem was and needed to be solved. We didn't know what the problem was. We just had to have a conversation for an hour and a half, right? So I think there's a lot of that. So I definitely always urge people to, spend some time in the lobby, and talk to other people. You never know what comes up and what gets solved.
Same thing when, especially have a newer member there. We really don't want them doing work while they're there. We want them to be there to
Sure.
learn. So whether it's a lunch break or a 15-minute coffee break, leave your phone, talk to people. One of the most satisfying things ever, we do this project management intensive in Baltimore. We do it a couple times a year. And one of the participants came up to me and said, "Gosh, everyone just keeps talking about the business." And that was really rewarding for me to know that that's the kind of, conversations that are being had and that sort of thing. So yeah.
Absolutely.
And I mean, you get the ear of someone like Michael Hodgin, who's just brilliant, or it could be Doug Howard. It could be anyone in our circle.
I don't know about Doug.
Uh,
Just kidding. I love Doug. I'm sure he's
too.
watching right now. I just have to take a dig at him.
Yep. No.
I can't remember where did he go to college? Where did he go to? Did he go to?
No one knows.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. I have
all Wharton everywhere. Just wearing.
My son's looking at schools, and he visited Wharton, and I made him come back with a Wharton T-shirt for me. So I have a Wharton T-shirt now too. But hey, that's a hard school to get into. It's a hard school to do the thing. So Doug did it. Give him credit.
Absolutely. Great, man. Well, I appreciate the time. Just to kind of wrap, you want to just tell us a little bit about the Why We Build podcast, how we can find you, how we can find RA and all that stuff?
Yeah, so Why We Build podcast, it's on Spotify, it's on all the usual suspects there. RSS, you can find it there as well. Remodelers Advantage, remodelersadvantage.com is a great resource for lots of information. And then if you wanted to email me, it's greg@remodelersadvantage.com.
Excellent. And who's up next on Why We Build?
I'm looking for a guest. Are you interested?
You know me. Sure.
Yeah. All right. Set it up.
You really want me on there.
Of course.
Yeah. Always happy to. I think yours is a little bit more structured than mine, but yeah. Well, yeah. I like to hear myself talk.
I like this format. I think maybe we'll go to this. It's easier.
It's easy. Greg, thanks again for joining us, man. Looking forward to talking again soon. Thanks for everything that you do for the community of design builders, and much appreciated.
Well, Dave, thank you for having me here. I miss hanging out with you. So let's Orlando next year.
That's right. Be in Orlando, except the builder show's in Orlando this spring too.
Are you going
to be a lot
of
Orlando trips? I am going to be there. I think
I will be there too.
Okay.
I'm speaking at IBS this year, so I'll see you there.
Awesome. We'll have our speaker badges.
Yes, we will.
Pretty cool. Awesome. Well, we'll see you in Orlando in the winter, if not before.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, man.
Thank you, Dave. Right on.
Bye.